Hey everybody, John here. So Baby Groot is kind of this 3D printing meme that's going around right now, so I thought I'd give it a try. And of course I added my own little twist to it. So I downloaded a free model of Baby Groot from Thingiverse, and then I added in one of our terrain pieces called Lookout to the scene. And then I resized the Groot model so that when it's printed it'll fit on the normal size that we print Lookout at. And right now both the terrain piece and Groot are separate pieces, and I'm going to print them up separately and finish them separately. It's just going to make it easier. And then once it's all done, I'm not sure if I'll glue them together or leave Groot freestanding, or free sitting in this case. I'm just going to see how it all looks when it's done and how it works out. Okay, I've got Baby Groot and the terrain piece printed out. I've started painting the terrain. I'm not going to go into any detail about how I finish it in this video, but if you want to see how it's done, you can just go to YouTube and search Terrainify tutorial. I have an entire video showing exactly how that's done in a step-by-step process. But right now I'm just going to focus on Groot. First color I'm using for base coating is Nutmeg by Folk Art. I'm just going to apply some paint right to my brush. And just paint it on. Then I'm going to get a little water, just a little bit, just to thin down the paint a little bit, help it flow better. And normally, I'm kind of taking a shortcut here. Normally when you thin your paints, you mix them in a bowl or a palette or something, but I'm just kind of doing it right on the model itself. This color has pretty good coverage, and given that I printed using a brown filament, the filament isn't going to really show through. You want to make sure your paint has good coverage, because for example, if I had printed this in black filament and was using the craft paint like this, especially thinning it down, then we'd have issues with the black filament still showing through because it's such a dark color. Alright, well, I'm going to go stick him in front of a fan to help speed up the drying process, and then when that's done I'll paint the rest of the top of his head there, and we'll go from there. Now that the base coat's dry, the next step is to apply a wash of a darker brown, and what this will do is it'll flow into the recessed areas of the model and help those details to stand out more. And I'm going to be using Burnt Umber from Folk Art. And this time you have to use a palette. Mixing right on the model itself is not going to work very well. So put a little bit of paint in one of the wells, and then water it down pretty heavily. And when you see it start behaving like this, that's pretty much the consistency you want. And then just apply it liberally over the entire model. And I got smart in using a base this time. This way I can just basically paint the whole thing, and not have to worry about picking it up later when it's done. I can just pick up the whole base. And this is kind of messy. It's going to run off the model, so make sure you're using a work surface that it's alright if it gets messy. And make sure to get every nook and cranny, get every look at the model from every angle. Okay, and now I'm going to take them back over to the fan. For the next part of this, we're going to be dry brushing several different colors onto the model. And dry brushing is similar to washing in that it creates contrast, but we're going to be working from the opposite direction, because instead of getting color into the recessed areas, dry brushing highlights the raised areas. And the first color that we're going to do is Nutmeg, because we're going to try to bring him back a little bit closer to his original color, because the wash, even though it focuses on the recessed areas, it does affect the color of the entire model. So dry brush apply a small amount of paint at full strength to the brush, and then wipe it off on a paper towel. And once you get to the point where only a little bit of color comes off, then that's when the brush is ready. And you want to use a light dusting motion when you do this, and do the entire model. Craft paints dry pretty quickly, especially when you're just dry brushing. So as soon as the first layer is done, you can pretty much start on the next one. And this is when we'll really start to see some of the detail pop. So the next color we're going to use is Honeycomb from Folk Art. Again, squeeze a small amount on at full strength. And I didn't bother washing the brush in between layers because this will just help everything blend together better. And then once you're satisfied with how it looks, you can start on the next color. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of green. And the first color I'm going to use is Clover, again from Folk Art. And this time I did use a different brush. Again, use the same light dusting motion. It might take a little bit for the color to show up, and if that's the case, just don't rush it, just take your time, build it up, let it build up gradually. In this case, it actually went on pretty quickly. And I'm going to do a few other areas. Not covering the entire model, just adding a few patches of color here and there. Maybe I'll do his feet. It's basically whatever looks good to you, whatever feels right. And again, we're not going for a real green. This is, we kind of want to see the brown still showing through the green. A little bit on the cheeks here. He's a tree, so he doesn't have rosy cheeks. He has, I don't know, chlorophyll-filled cheeks. Well, I guess the chlorophyll would just be in the leaves. I don't know, whatever, they're green. And then the next color, Citrus Green, Folk Art. Just like with the browns, I'm going to use the same brush. And this time, I'm doing even smaller, covering an even smaller area than what I did with the previous green. So we're building up layers, and the idea is that you want all of your previous layers from the previous steps to show through. There we go. Next thing we're going to do is paint the eyes, and I'm going to use black. Now normally when painting organic things, black is a really harsh color, and even in nature you just don't really see pure black. Fur, for example, it appears black. Most of the time it's really just a really dark brown, but in all of the art that I've seen for Baby Groot, his eyes look pretty black, so that's what I'm going to use. Now this time, it is important to thin the paint using a palette. So just a couple of drops of water. Now you don't want it really runny like how we had it when we did the wash. So something like that, that's pretty good. That's about right. And it's important to have a brush with a decent point when you do this. So get a little bit of paint on the brush, wipe off the excess, and just start painting the eyes. And the nice thing about all this is that if you make a mistake, you can go back, just go back to your base color and touch up the areas where you made a mistake. And take your time when you do this. Oh, and for the record, I'm using Anita's black craft paint, but really as long as it's a flat black, the brand doesn't matter. Okay, there's one detail left on the eye, but make sure that the black paint is dry before you go on to the next step. This next step is the hardest, but it'll really go a long way towards adding more life to this model, and it'll break up those solid black orbs that he has for eyes, which honestly I just find a little bit creepy. So for this, we're going to use Steel Gray by Folk Art. Thin some down in your palette. And we're going to add some light reflections to the eyes. The key to this, and the hardest part, is trying to get them to be as symmetrical as possible. So really pay attention to where you put your first point on your first eye, and try to get that pretty much the same on the second one. It's tricky because you're not only matching position, but you have to match size and shape as well. But again, the good thing is you can always go back and start over. It's very easy. Just paint the black over the eye if you need to, and start again. Or if you get close but not quite right, you can trim up the eye, the pinpoints of light with the black. Now I'm going to add a second point below the first one. And there we go. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful, and hopefully it'll inspire you to go out and paint your own Baby Groot. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.